Yeah, y'all know all the X's and O's, man. I'm just sitting at home watching. I don't like to get into that because I don't believe the game is really decided on the field. So
Hey everyone, guess who's back? It's the commish back here with another draft preview. This time we got Stan and BC Lions, a guy that I think was in tier 3. Maybe you can confirm that, Stan. I know you were definitely in tier 2. I also want to say I actually had the privilege of meeting Stan the other day. I went to the BC Lions home opener. Who the hell were they playing against? I can't even remember who they were playing against. Um, Texted Stan and was able to meet him at the game. And one thing I'll be honest with all of you, and you, Stan, you're a CFL diehard. There's no question about that. You know, the things that you were saying at the game, I had no clue about. I didn't even know the players. I was there to see the concert. LL Cool J was there to kick off, as well as bring the family to the Lions game. So, anyways, it was great to see you, Stan. Great to see you in person. And I'll be honest, you're a great guy. And I'm really happy that you were in this league and a part of it and in the same division as us. Let me just share my screen here and get into your preview. I actually thought you were actually in a bit of a better scenario than what you are this year. But one of the things I will mention, I believe Stan was the overwhelming favorite to drop last year. He didn't. And, I think that was a win in itself, considering, he was the overwhelming favorite. But it did cause some issues from your draft outlook. But before we get into that, let's talk a bit about your keepers. So you're very wide receiver heavy here. 4 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 linebacker. You're missing, I think, the 2 most critical roles in fantasy on offense, and that's, of course, your quarterbacks and your running backs. So that could create some problems for you. Who do you have a keeper? Well, Stephon Diggs. He's a bit of I personally feel a cancer on most teams. And we're starting to see that come to fruition now in Buffalo, just like it kind of did in Minnesota. This guy, Odell gets a hard time, but I think Stephon Diggs truly is a bigger, diva than Odell is. So, I've never really been a big fan of Diggs, to be honest. I think he's overrated, or at least he thinks he's the best, and he's not. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett there from the Seahawks. I think that's going to be a bit of a mistake, especially with Jackson Smith and Jibba there now taking some likely receptions away from either Lockett and or Metcalf. But I could be wrong that the NFC West is pretty weak this year. So maybe Geno Smith and the Seahawks actually have a big year offensively. So you could prove me wrong there. Amari Cooper, I think this is his last year in Cleveland. They're going to want to dump that contract next year. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays, whether or not he just wants to stay healthy and not get hurt. So he gets a contract with another team. Hard to say. TJ Hawkinson, I think, is going to be a great safety valve for Kirk Cousins. And I like that offense, actually, for Minnesota, if you think about it. Sounds like KJ Osborne's having a good camp. They added Addison to pair up with Jefferson. And you throw in Hawkinson last year, again, lots of guys to cover, lots of speed. So that's going to be interesting to see how Hawkinson does, maybe in the red zone. And then Devin White at linebacker, I think, is a pretty solid addition. Tampa Bay, I don't think is going to be a very good team this year, which means the defense could be on the field a lot this year, which essentially would mean Devin White's going to have a big year tackle-wise. He took a little step back last year compared to 2 years ago. Looking at your draft picks, well, so first off, your draft pick scenario isn't that bad. I mentioned I thought it was worse than originally I'd thought. But again, I think part of it was you maybe traded some picks to survive last year. And, the other thing, too, like this is the thing. Everybody thought you were going to drop. You got second place in the consolation. You're picking number 2. Unbelievable. Right now, if I was picking 2, Jahmyr Gibbs might be an obvious choice, but there's also scary Terry McLaurin available at wide receiver. Imagine if you went with the 5 wide receiver monster, 0 running back strategy. There would be an opportunity for maybe you to pull the trigger on that. It's not like scary Terry is a bad pick either, and he could be a future keeper instead of Tyler Lockett. Not telling you what to do. I mean, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is also there, and it's always good to get some rookie running back talent. You have 9 picks in the first rounds 1 to 10. Obviously, the round 1 pick at pick number 2. Then you got a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you're missing a 2 and a 10. So actually, it's only 8 picks in the first rounds 1 to 10. So my apologies, it's 8 picks there. And then when we look at rounds 11 to 20, you got 7 picks, 11, 13, 14, 16, 2, and 17. So a fair amount of gaps there, missing a 12th, missing a 15th, an 18th, and a 20th. And then in rounds 21 to 29, it's actually 14 picks that you have. I originally had 13. Sorry, I got my math wrong for rounds 1 to 10. You actually have 14 picks in rounds 21 to 29, which is almost half your picks. Which I think is going to create some problems for you, especially when the last team we previewed, Adrian, looked like he had a pretty good draft pick scenario with not too much worse keepers than you. So having 3 picks in round 29, doubling up on 25, 23, 22, and 21 is not a winning formula draft-wise. But again, you were in a worse scenario last year, and you survived. And I think there's other teams in worse scenarios this year than you. Which is why I think you likely will survive this year. And there's your outlook, right? We talked about it. You didn't fall last year, and I think that was a tremendous success. Everybody pegged you as one of the worst owners in history in the LOC back when it was named that. And part of that reason was obviously, I think it was 2 years ago, you had a ton of picks and you didn't do so well. And that happens to a lot of teams. So, the way I look at it is you redeemed yourself last year. You proved your spot to be here. That's my honest opinion. Again, you don't have a great pick scenario, but it could be a hell of a lot worse. There's other teams out there that are in a worse scenario, and I think you can continue to improve if you can just hang on. Maybe don't trade your picks this year and just hang on and survive. It would set you up to have probably a competitive year next year. I think you will likely miss the playoffs this year. I think the red and white's just too strong with Adrian and his good pick scenario. And then you'll see myself. I think I have a pretty good pick scenario as well. So tough teams that you're going to face there with myself, Adrian, my brother, Brian, also in there. And then Susie, of course. So, anyway, Stan, I just want to say again, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here in the league. Again, you're definitely a diehard CFL fan. I would love to see you translate that knowledge about the CFL over to the NFL and see you have some success here in fantasy. That remains to be seen. But again, pleasure to have you here. And if I'm ever down there again to check out the lines, I'll make sure I'll give you a buzz. Good luck this year.